Hamas says it has now released the body of Israeli hostage Shiri Bibas from Gaza after admitting it made a mistake in Thursday's handover. Israel accused Hamas of breaking the terms of the Gaza ceasefire when forensic tests showed that the remains handed over belonged to an unidentified woman. Forensic tests have yet to establish whether the second body is really that of Shiri Bibas.
After months of waiting, another bitter disappointment for Israelis gathered at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. The remains of Israeli hostage Shiri Bibas, not among the 4 bodies released by Hamas militants. The revelation brought a demand for action and accountability from the victim's family.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we did not receive an apology from you in this painful moment. For Ariel and Kafir's sake and for Yarden's sake, we are not seeking revenge right now. The Hamas cruelty only emphasises the urgent need to bring Shiri back to us, save the lives of the living hostages, and return all the fallen for burial.
Israel says Shiri and her 2 children likely died just a few weeks after they were taken by militants during the terror attacks of October the 7th, 2023. But Israeli investigators reject Hamas's assertion that the 3 were killed in an Israeli airstrike, alleging instead they were killed by their captors.
We will work with determination to bring Shiri home together with all our hostages, both living and dead, and ensure that Hamas pays the full price for this cruel and malicious violation of the agreement.
The militants maintain Shiri and her children were killed during an Israeli airstrike. They say the mother's body was likely misidentified when it was recovered from the rubble, and have requested the return of the Gazan woman. They also reaffirmed their commitment to further exchanges. But these latest complications have raised fears the release of 6 more hostages, scheduled for this Saturday, could be delayed, leaving those back at Hostage Square with little option but to wait and hope.
I'm now joined by Aaron David Miller, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He's been an advisor on Arab-Israeli negotiations to 6 US Secretaries of State. Great to have you on DW News. So we're fast approaching the end of the first phase in the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Are you confident that the second phase will even begin, or will there be a return to the fighting?
No, I don't think, I have no confidence and no faith that an implementation of the second phase will ever take place. At best, I think what we're talking about is the choice between an extension of phase 1, which will be done both because Hamas and Israel have a stake in getting things from this agreement. The Israelis want more live hostages. Hamas wants an asymmetrical number of prisoners and the continued surge of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, which they're monetizing. So I suspect you are going to get that or a return to the fighting. But in any event, I don't see a way that Hamas or Israel, weeks from now or months from now, would ever agree to implement the articles of the agreement, which call for a release of all the hostages, an end to the war, and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. I can't imagine that this Israeli government, or any, frankly, without a fundamental change in the status of Gaza with security apparatus and some effective governance, is going to agree to that.
All right, let's go into a little bit more detail. You've touched on it there, some of the obstacles. But what are the biggest obstacles then? Are we talking about then essentially that it would come down to perhaps a change in government in Israel, that's the only way, or pressure from the United States? How do you see those obstacles being overcome?
I mean, they may not. This is a true conundrum. And look, Hamas would agree to return all the hostages in exchange for a cosmically asymmetrical number of Palestinian prisoners, but they would demand a guarantee, which nobody is prepared to give them. Not the UN, not the German government, not the US government, that Israel would end the war and withdraw all of its forces. I can't imagine that the current government, or even if you got a more center government, would agree to that. So the question really remains, and I don't want to put too much hope here on the Arab summit that's going to convene in March, first week in March, come up with a plan for both security and political governance in Gaza. Netanyahu wants to destroy Hamas not only as a military organization, but as a political force in Gaza. And he has not yet succeeded in doing that after 15 months. So I think I wish I could make a longer-term prediction, but I can't.
Let's talk about actually the Arab states there, because they are trying to come up with an alternative plan for the future of Gaza. What do you think that could look like, though?
Well, the elements of a rational plan, whether it was conceived of by the key Arab states, the international community, or with a functional Israeli government that has had a stake in creating a pathway, actually, out of October 7th to something else, would look like first of all, you'd have security architecture, either an international force, Arab boots on the ground, supported by the United States, which would essentially be tasked with the job of maintaining order. Number two, you'd have to have a functional Palestinian governance that was an alternative to Hamas that had legitimacy and credibility. And three, you'd have to have a massive international effort into the billions of dollars, not just to dispense humanitarian aid and give the better part of 2 million people access to potable water, sanitation, medical care, and consistent deliverable food supplies. You'd need billions to begin the painful process of reconstruction. Right. I think this is an idea for a galaxy far, far away. It's not tethered to the realities back here on planet Earth.
We don't have a huge amount of time, but I'm curious to know what you make of Donald Trump's plan for the US to take control of the Gaza Strip and to move the 2 million plus Palestinians out of their homeland.
It's ridiculous. It tethers the United States to what could be described as forced transfer or even ethnic cleansing. It validates the fantasies of the Israeli right wing. It undermines relations with Egypt and Jordan, and on the cusp of negotiations between the United States and Russia over Ukraine, it sends a terrible signal to authoritarians everywhere that if you want to take territory, just give a press conference, tell the world you're going to take it without any justification whatsoever. No, this is it's not just a foolish plan. It's a dangerous plan.
Aaron David Miller, thanks for your analysis and thanks for joining us tonight on DW News.
And thanks so much for having me.